right. Thanks everybody for joining. So this is, as always, set up to be a mastermind where we're talking about a topic that you guys have brought to us as something that you wanted to learn about. And webinars is something that has come up really consistently as something that, that you either struggled with or are working on. And we wanted to have a conversation around it. So if you notice in the chat, just want you guys to be thinking about it and maybe write down your thoughts, questions. It doesn't mean that you have to be really good at doing webinars. We want to hear from you, whether it's like, I tried this and it didn't work at all, or I tried this one aspect that worked, but this other thing didn't. And let's talk about it. So I have invited, of course, as always, Dave Savage is on these, and he is absolutely exceptional at doing webinars, of course, for the industry, but has really built a fantastic community around that. And I also invited Noah from Linder Logics, who has built an incredible community through webinars. And so we're going to have them chime in as well. But Dave just messaged me that his computer died, so he'll be on here in just a second. So I want to start out with just asking you guys what is related to webinars, whether it be for real estate agents or partners, or it's for consumers. Have you done any webinars, and how has it gone for you? I see in the chat memo that you haven't tried any yet, which surprises me because I think of you as such an educator. So I am curious to see if is that something on your radar, Mema?
It is. I hear a lot of other chatter in other platforms talking about how that's the way to go. But I'm just such an in-person type of guy, and then you have that fear of one person showing up, right? And
Yes.
so I think that that's probably the next thing I'm going to try with the financial literacy stuff, as I have had people after I did the in-person one reach out and say, "Hey, when are you going to do it again?" We weren't able to go. So um, yeah, it's definitely on my radar for sure.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I've been hearing from a lot of people. Either they have tried it and it didn't work for them, or they have wanted to, but are kind of nervous about it. And we have a lot of content that you guys can leverage in the community to do webinars. So we want to make sure that you guys are able to use that if you want to. We did a webinar, an Impact Mastermind, I think it was about a year ago, with Joe Soto, who does webinars kind of as more of like as content. And so he does them live, but records them and doesn't necessarily get a ton of attendance live, but uses that content post attendance. So that's kind of one strategy around the webinars is leveraging them as content post session. So today we're going to structure the conversation around one, getting people into the room and what it looks like around promotion, and then two, what it looks like to engage people over webinar. That's the one that I feel like I've worked a lot. I've worked a lot on all three sides of this post webinar as well. But on the engagement piece, I think that people are not wanting to sit for an hour and hear a lecture a lot of times. And so we can talk about some strategies around that. And then looking at post webinar, how to leverage the content beyond that. And we have a playbook basically in our channel for ambassadors, which I will share with anybody that is on this call. I'll share my screen here. And we can leverage some of the content there, but we're going to build this out together and after this call. So we have this webinar playbook here. It's designed for ambassadors, so it leverages our content. But of course, even if you're not an ambassador, I'll show you some ways to leverage that. And in here, we talk through like what is the vision for having a webinar, and I think thinking through who are you trying to reach, what does success look like around that. Because it might be that you just want to have some consistency, leverage some of clips from webinars using some tools like Opus to grab clips automatically and create some social content. And then that's a little bit different than trying to get 50 people on a webinar. Um, And then there's the, choosing the topic focus and kind of structuring that, looking at engagement. So I'm not going to go through all this right now, but we'll go through it together. And then, like I said, we'll build this together through this mastermind. And if anyone on this call knows people who, it sounds like a lot of you on the call have either not tried it or tried it without any luck, but would love to hear if you know someone, you're like, oh, I watched this person do webinars and it seems like it's going well. Send us their name and we'll reach out to them and we'll start to kind of create a playbook that is, industry leading in this space. So that's the work we're going to do together collectively. DJ, thoughts from you.
Well, yeah, I was trying, couldn't remember how to raise my hand earlier when you were talking. It took me a minute to figure out how to do it. It's been a minute since I've been in Zoom, but I've done 6 webinars in the past. It's been a little over a year since I've last done them. I actually went through a coaching program that kind of helped with like setting up the operational side of like running the Facebook ads, having a Facebook business page, because that stuff is stuff I'm not good at. But the biggest problem I had was what something you said earlier was getting people to engage in a Zoom webinar. Maybe a couple people would have their camera on, most would not for whatever reason. Maybe they're at home cooking dinner, listening. I don't know what they're doing, but that was the biggest struggle is getting people to engage because not only do people not want to hear a lecture for an hour, I don't want to lecture for an hour. I would like it to be more conversational. So I don't know that I have the answers to it. I just have real world experience of knowing like it's very hard. Like there was times where I would just take awkward moments of silence. Like I would ask a question, I'd be like, all right, we'll wait. Like I don't want to just, talk to you guys, like engage and people just wouldn't really do it. And I don't know if that's because, they're nervous, they're uncomfortable, whatever. I don't know. But I don't have the solution to it. I just know that it is very much a reality in these online webinars.
Yes, and I've been doing webinars for a really long time, and that was a real muscle that I had to learn and still learn around feeling comfortable talking into a screen. Because, like you said, Memo, I mean, I am much better in person. I want to feel the energy of the audience. I want to see people's faces react to what I'm saying. And it feels like a different kind of performance to pretend that you can see what people are saying. And I do different types of webinars. Like I partner with National MI to do webinars all the time where I don't have the option to see people's faces. And I think some of that's a different kind of thing where many of you, especially if you're doing consumer webinars, you are mostly speaking to what feels like yourself, and you have to kind of put out energy in a way that is uncomfortable, and so, but that becomes comfortable over time, is what I was going to say. So, um, any other thoughts from people who have started this? And DJ, I'm going to pull you in as you, even though I know this is new for you, I want to hear a little bit about some of the strategy you're utilizing or have started utilizing around Facebook ads and that type of thing. Because we had Lynette on, one of our ambassadors who is from Churchill, and she's doing a really great job with her webinars, but she wasn't able to make it today. And in our ambassador call, she talked about how social media advertising was a big part of that, of getting the attendance. So that's something we can add into the playbook as we grow and get experts in that space. But yeah, any others who are on the call that want to share a little bit about either what's working or what's not been working for you? Kimmy, have you done webinars? I know you have done the live stuff and kind of struggled a little bit with that.
Yes. So I have done webinars. Let's see. I've probably done like 8. And so I didn't launch it at scale though because I just need to like see if this works, make sure the content's good because I'm an overthinker. It's like a struggle of mine. Um, but anyways, I just launched it to a certain segment of my database. Long story short, it's basically a group that me and 2 realtors cultivate through our affiliation with Homes for Heroes. And so it's ultimately like teachers and stuff like that. So we basically just marketed to that segment, which was like, it's like under 500 people. So it's not a huge, list. And I did a series of three. So I broke it down. We basically put it's a series of three. You don't have to go to one to attend the other. But we kind of we combined some of the presentation topics into three. And the people that did attend like really liked it. I got really good feedback. People came for the next one, but like my attendance was never more than like five. And so that's my struggle is how do I get more people? How do I get in front of more people? I have not tried any social media advertising at all yet.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can continue to explore is looking at the social media advertising is has been a success, it sounds like, for a lot of people. But I love what you were saying about looking at partners. So asking, for us, like we ask partners to share our webinars ahead of time or partner with like Down Payment Resource and they're sharing with or Lender Logics. We're doing one with them shortly. And so you shared your database, and that helps with that cross promotion. And something that I talk about a lot with webinars and or live events is thinking about where are you connected? Is it a church or like for me, my gym? I'm doing a session there, and just thinking about where does the audience already exist and where might they find value in you sharing this. So that's one tactic we can talk about. But we'll get into a little bit of that here shortly. I want to bring Dave into the conversation. And Dave, you have had a huge following through your YouTube channel and webinars, virtual events is kind of a huge area that you've been very successful in and building community that way. So would love to have you share a little bit about your history around webinars and kind of framing the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And I don't know if Mark Bowie is going to be able to join us, but he was my guest yesterday on the Mortgage Coach's Corner. Is going to do about 50 million, and he actually just recently did a big webinar and had like 100 people show up. If he joins us to tell the story, I'm going to just stop talking and bring him into the game. And if he can't, Kristen and I will get the story and the best practices to you guys. So stay tuned on that. So to answer the question in a way that I think is valuable for everyone, what I've done with Mortgage Coach and the YouTube channel, it's a B2B play. And it's loan officers helping loan officers. And have always positioned myself as the guide, not the hero. And the problem I'm solving is that in every market, there are loan officers that are winning. In every market, there's more loan officers that are losing. And so I've always, first of all, at a mission level, had a mindset that every week I'm going to put on the mortgage industry's best sales meeting and help loan officers have a place where they can learn how to win in this market. And so transitioning that mindset to a loan officer who's trying to, we're talking about a B to C consumer webinar. I think it would be a little nuanced different if we were talking about like a realtor. I think is have a mindset, have a mission, have a why. Because it isn't easy. It's not easy to get people to show up. It's not easy to get people to turn on cameras. But if you have this, like, why, like, I want to be the best loan officer at providing education and inspiration around home ownership to my database, in my local market, for my realtors. Like, if you had a really powerful why, which I have a really powerful why, that it's why 15 years later, I am still doing a weekly podcast with badass loan officers solving the problems I have. So to me, that part of my story, I think transitions really well. Like this is not something you go, oh, let's give it a whirl. And if I can't get anybody to show up, it doesn't work for me, or it's not right for me. I mean, it's all about reps. The more reps you do, the better you get, the more confident you get, the more you learn. Um, the other part of my story that I think transitions well to today's webinar is it's make someone else the hero. Like now I'm not saying there are some really badass loan officers that are like, show hosts. They are the rock star. So if that's you and just flourish and be the guy or the girl, like be you. But I think there's a lot more of us like me that like be the guide and tell stories, around families that, you know, didn't think they could buy a home and, they had credit issues or they had income issues and tell stories and teach strategies. And that whole strategy also, by the way, it makes the job easier. It removes a lot of the pressure. Like if I would have said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to put on the best sales meeting in the mortgage industry every week," and it was like I was the hero and I had to do it. Uh, I guarantee it would not be something I've done every week for 15 years. But because I'm looking for heroes that have solved this problem that I'm amplifying, and then I'm telling their stories. I'm teaching their strategies. So I think, the mindset, and then, be the guide, not the hero, and look for stories and strategies to teach. One last note on this, both Mortgage Coach, as a presentation is a great way to tell a story and teach a strategy. And when you look at First Home IQ and the content that we provided, especially the new Learn platform, like I just can't believe how easy it would be to be a loan officer with this mentality, with this guide. They've got stories and strategies that are digital and modern. They've got First Home IQ with just an infinite amount of content, ideas, and strategies. It's never been easier to pull this off. So if people have questions around what I said, or Kristen, if you want to dig into that, let me know.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, it starts with everything that we do as First Home IQ. It's starting with knowing your why. And otherwise, if we don't have that, it's very easy to go off course, not understand, what is the finish line look like, what does success look like, and it's easy to burn out, and not feel like you're really doing anything with this. It makes those reps a whole lot harder to actually complete. So I love what you're saying. Be the guide, not the hero. And I put this in the chat, but understanding your why, telling stories, and teaching strategies. One of the most successful homebuyer events I ever did was having people from different aspects of the housing industry speak for just 5 minutes and have them talk about their aspect of the housing industry and the homebuyer process. And then we did kind of Q&A and some stuff like that. But I feel like giving people like bringing other leaders in, whether it be a conversation on one part of the home buying process, or it be, guiding people through the Learn platform or one aspect of the Learn platform, which I'll show you guys here in a second. That could be an easy way for you to have content and not make it just about you. It's about you teaching and sharing your why as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And real quick, I noticed that Bree is here. Hey, Bree Lees. And just knowing the topic, for anyone who doesn't know Bree, she's one of the industry's fractional CMOs. She's helping a lot of big players. I'm not going to list her clients because that's up to her, but she also helps us. And she's also been a head of marketing for multiple IMBs. So she knows loan officers. She probably has seen some loan officers fail at what we're talking about, and she's probably seen some loan officers thrive. Anything you want to throw into the mix right now, Brie?
I think one thing that I would add, because I think you added a lot of value about knowing your why. Also, within knowing your why, I think it's really important to know what success looks like. A lot of times, loan officers define success by the number of people that are sitting in the room, and it's defeating to say, I didn't get 100 people in here with me. It's like 100 people fills up an entire stadium. You don't need 100 people. You need 10 people to trust you. If you had a coffee shop meeting with 10 people, that would be huge for 10 people to show up, right? And so I think that's one thing I would add is your mindset towards who's in the room, um, and how they show up. They're showing up because they trust you, and success isn't defined by the number of people that show up. It's by the number of people that trust you. And that could be 10 people, but that's better than one person that trusts you. And that trust will continue to build. To Dave's point, it isn't just a one-off that you do one time, like build that trust muscle with your audience and with your people.
I gotta add on to what she said there, and I would take it one step further, where she says, "Oh, you need 10." No, you need one, and you need two, you need three. Another part of why I am as passionate around, the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel as ever is because not only am I creating one-to-many content that helps achieve both my business goals and my purpose goals, but I am getting better. Like every time I'm on that call, I become a better leader, I become smarter. And so, if you have, I think we want more than one, but I would still do the show with one. But if you had three, imagine the leverage that you have doing, a 2 or 3 person event. Even if you were hoping to have 20 and only three showed up, it's an opportunity to become a better leader, a better presenter, an inspire of home ownership. And so do be thinking a lot about that. There's the goal is loans and helping realtors sell homes. Secondarily, it's the people that you impact, but make sure you have a goal about personal growth and how doing this builds your skill, builds your ability to speak and tell stories better. So that's what I thought of when I heard that, Bree. I loved it.
Yeah.
And a few things to think about. I mean, there are so many different approaches to doing webinars and why you might do them. But there's the one that is just focused on reaching home buyers that are ready to buy today. But mostly people are going to be dipping their toe in at the point of, I'm curious about this. So you're thinking a little bit ahead, like something that, Neil Dingra does a great job of talking about how to get people to show up at webinars. And one of his focus areas around this is looking at, I think I put his quote in our playbook on this. If you want to talk to people when they're ready for your opportunity, you're just a choice among many. If you talk to them 6 months before they're ready, you're the only one they want to work with. And so thinking about that as like the building trust piece, this is a part of building ahead. And that's what First Home IQ is really all about, helping people who are feeling overwhelmed or are not sure that they're going to be able to buy or when they could buy to start dipping their toe in. So there's that. There's also reaching out to real estate agents and doing presentations with our First Home IQ research, which all of you have access to. You can use those slides. You can have conversations about what the next gen home buyer is needing. You can partner with real estate agents to reach home buyers. Or Todd Bookspan did a really fantastic series using all 10 of our core presentations, going to real estate agents and offering this to their kids or their buyers, and going to his database and talking about, bring your kids to talk through the whole series about financial literacy. And that can be its own strategy of going back to your database. That's again kind of that nurture type of sequence. Any other ideas around kind of the approach before we dig into filling the room? Okay, so let's dig into how we actually get people to show up. We've heard a few people talk about this already, and but want to start with, again, we're going to go into the strategy around engaging with people on the webinar, and then we'll get into the actual post webinar, which can be its own focus of doing webinars, is just getting that post webinar content. Since we've had a few people join, I just want to share some of the resources that we have for you today, and then again, what we're building. So if you are an ambassador, and I'll share a link to this here for everyone to access, but this is the webinar playbook. It is in the resources channel. This is the one we have today, but again, we're going to build this together and have a much more in-depth one moving forward. But this leverages the content you have access to. And then I also wanted to show you in the education channel, which if you're an ambassador or a partner, you have a full presentation library, but even if you're not, if you're just in the community, this is free for everybody. You can go into the free educational presentation and leverage the presentation worksheet, all of that. You can, and all of these have lots of questions and engagement in them. And then you can also leverage the games that we have. So I'll walk through some of that in the learn resources. And then when we have the new playbook put together, if you go to events, all of our at least more recent events have playbooks associated with them. So you'll see here, you'll be able to click on that. And just like on Allie's, you'll go in here and see the playbook. And we'll also email this out to everybody. So once we get more feedback and input through this conversation, and we're leveraging the Joe Soto webinar and some other webinars that we've done and our resources to build the one that we have today. So I'll share that with you. And then the last thing I want to share is not just the presentation, but you can also go to our new platform, learn.firsthomiq.com. And this is something you can use as a leave behind or teach from it. But this has a start my homeownership plan, and you can walk through. I've already started this, but you can start over here. And then it will guide you through a couple questions and then build my plan. And this gives you our First Home IQ short video content, a calculator that is associated with each. And then you can type in questions here or, whatever content. Okay, my budget is, let's say, 5,000, saved my plan. And then it goes through each of the core areas that we want to think through around having a plan. And then you go to my plan and it's saved here. And if you're an ambassador, by probably the end of the week, you'll have your own version of this that's on your page. But this is something you can teach through. You can also
Great.
just, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, like, I would really make that my base camp, like the new ambassador page, the more that you can teach through that. Because Kristen, show them a prototype. The whole design of this was
I
following.
can't. It's broken right now because I realized I'm in the process of changing the domain. And right before I logged in, I was like, oh, let me pull it up.
No
It's
worries.
really cool, but you can't see
It's
it right now.
it's really cool, but it follows all the framework of the trust framework. So it's all about building trust, and then it's all built around you're the guide, and you'll see that the way your picture is positioned,
I needed
some
to
of the
figure that out.
text it has, it's built you into the actual experience, both the content. Wait, stop right there. You notice how Christian joined a nonprofit to help people own their future. Like, it's going to have your name. So this is the financial literacy, homeownership ready incubation platform. And I would truly make this my foundational piece of content once it's live. And then the other thing is, if you're doing a webinar, you don't have people's contact information, it's got lead magnets. So if they engage with it, like you taught them with it, and now they engage with it, you're getting their contact information. Hey, Kristen, real quick, if you could stop sharing the screen. I just saw that Mark Bowie, who was my guest on Tuesday. So if you want to hear a whole hour of how Mark is helping people in Orange County, Mark, I'm going from memory, but your average renter is around $3,400 a month in your market, and your average buy a home in Orange County is $5,000 to $6,000 a month. Is that right? You're on mute, my friend.
That is correct. On the low side, it's $3,400 and $6,000 a month. You know, it's not
So
uncommon for us to see like first-time home buyer getting into a $7,000 a month mortgage payment, which is mind-blowing.
yeah, so that's his world, and he's doing about $50 million a year. The majority of that is first-time home buyers, and so you had mentioned to me that you've done some webinars and you've had some pretty successful ones. You mind telling us a story of how you're doing it and what you're doing and why you're doing
Yeah,
it?
so of course. I mean, most of us on this call have had some experience putting together a first time homebuyer event. And when I first started, we would have maybe 5, 7 people show up on a weekend at best. So the last one we did, we teamed up with CalHAFA, which is the first time down payment assistance program here in California. I reached out to them and shared with them what our plans are for the first time homebuyer event. They agreed to collaborate with us. We invited one of them to be a guest speaker, and we just promoted the crap out of the event using stories on social media. It was literally over a span of like 3 weeks. Every other day, we would post something about this upcoming event and driving hype. We ended up having over 120 people sign up for the first time homebuyer seminar. I mean, it was raining that day and people showed up. We had about 100 people that actually showed up. Just crushed it, was able to generate some pretty decent leads out of it too, and help some first time homebuyers get into their first property, which is really cool. And a
Oh,
lot
for
of people
sure.
showed up to learn about the down payment assistance. The people that we ended up closing bought a home even without it. So
Love this. So what, first of all, what a badass story. Put questions in chat or ask questions because I think he kind of covered top of the funnel at a really broad level. If you could real quick walk us through the experience, and what you taught, how long was it, give us some vision on the content.
yeah, so my part was 15 minutes, and then I had the real estate team that we partnered up with speak for about 10, 15 minutes as well, and then Cal Haffa just kind of did the rest with talking about their DPA programs, the process, et cetera. But when I go into these first time homebuyer trainings, I tackle two main fears and concerns that a lot of buyers have, right? One is timing. Is this the right time to buy? Am I going to buy and have 2008 happen all over again where I lose a ton of equity and, you know, and end up being upside down on a property? That's a big fear for a lot of first time home buyers. The other bigger fear is affordability. We're in an environment right now where rates are 6.5% on average. Home prices are higher. And in my market, to get into your very first property, you are looking at $5,000, $6,000 a month minimum. And a lot of our renters are paying half of that amount per month. So being able to like bridge that gap and to use the words that you used yesterday, Dave, showing people clarity as far as what the vision will look like, not just 6 months from now as a homeowner, 12 months from now, but over the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years is really impactful. And when you can show people the power of home ownership through tax benefit, principal reduction, appreciation, equity building, it helps them overcome the fear of jumping from a low rent payment to embracing it and investing in a higher mortgage payment.
Love that. Love that. And I really do. I'll go find the link. I'll put it in chat. Kristen, I don't know if you have questions or if anybody else has questions, but I'll go find that link for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, first I do want to share in the Learn platform, one of the calculators we have is we have affordability, but like looking at what fits into my budget. But what he said that I really liked is looking at home ownership as a big picture. And of course, if you have mortgage coach, things like that, all of that is super helpful. But I think it's important for us to help people think about what it means to be a homeowner over the long term because most people that buy a home they're thinking about being in that home for a shorter period of time, probably like 5 years, but it doesn't mean that you're not still a homeowner beyond that. They're most likely going to buy another home or move to another home they own. And I think for a lot of people that rent versus own doesn't look very good over the next 2 years and in markets like ours. And so then you think, well, I should just rent. And that's the narrative that I hear on podcasts and social media all the time. But you have to look at what does it mean if I am owning a home for the next 10 years, 20 years, and I think that showing that big picture, and this is the first one that goes into our, modules around that. But yeah, Mark, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about, for people who are nervous about getting people to show up at a webinar. And this is what I heard constantly on our last ambassador call too, is people were saying, I just don't know how to get people to actually attend. What advice would you share? And I'll ask, Bree and maybe bring you in, Noah, as well, but to share what have you seen work and what would you suggest for people who are thinking about getting started with that?
Yeah, so for me, what works really well is finding first-time homebuyer programs in your local market, right? Uncovering down payment assistance programs that a lot or most of the general public are not familiar with, and promoting that, using that as a hook to get people to show up. Meaning, hey, you're not putting together a first-time homebuyer seminar or workshop to convince people to buy a property, but you're putting together this event to show people the possibilities and the available down payment assistance programs that might be available to them. Typically, we'll highlight like a particular product and just really lean on education. Like the event is all about education. You're going to learn, you're going to take away information that you wish you would have learned like years ago.
I love that. So one of the things that I want everyone to remember is that people are, I think they're not reaching out because of a few reasons that we talk about all the time at First Home IQ. One is that they are so overwhelmed by information to begin with. Like they are, they look into it and then they kind of shut down. And 50% of people in our last survey said that they avoided financial decisions or talking to a professional just because of the overwhelm itself. So that's one. And I think focusing in, like you said, on down payment or a specific story or topic helps people feel a little bit relief around that. And feel like they're going to get that clarity, like you mentioned. And then, secondly, there's a lot of distrust. So people are nervous that they're going to get sold to. And I think, like you are clear about, you're going to learn about this down payment assistance program. That feels like, okay, I'm going to get something that's beneficial for me. I'm not just getting sold to on something. And I think those two things, plus the fact that so many people, I mean, we in our survey, 82% said that they never learned any financial literacy in school. So there's a lot of lack of education there that makes people not feel confident coming to the table. So yeah, I think that's really helpful thinking about how do you get people, because so many people might come to the table just in your exact story because they want to learn about an entry point. Like we've talked about shared equity programs and how house hacking and things like that have helped people get to the table, and then they often are able to buy conventionally because they didn't realize that they were already able to. Um, Bree or Noah or anyone else want to chime in around how you're getting attendance?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Mark, about educating, like giving somebody something that they can take away from the event. And Kristen, you're right too about there is this amount of a certain amount of distrust where people are thinking you're going to try to sell to them or something like that. But what's worked for us, and we do B2B. So not only are we trying to, we want loan officers to attend our webinars, but we also want, executives or decision makers or people from other higher up teams. So what we'll do is we'll sit down and put a ton of thought into like what's trending in the industry right now and how can we establish ourselves as a thought leader around that topic and educate people on it. And that seems to work really well. We consistently get over 100 attendees and we do 1 to 2 webinars a quarter. And then we capitalize on and double down on promotion too. So we'll do webinar promo trailers. We will have a flashy graphic for it that we post consistently. And we'll also post in like message boards that are relevant towards the topic and stuff like that. And doing so has, no joke, like it's helped us do a 180-degree turn with our webinar attending rate. So just like doubling down on high-end advertising and production, and obviously sitting there and really thinking about, what topic can we really teach people about so that they can leave the webinar having learned something.
I love
Hey,
that.
Mark, if you could describe, I know you use Mortgage Coach's Rep versus Own as part of the educational experience. But whether it was a mortgage coach experience or whether you were using the calculator in FirstHome IQ, which, by the way, the thing I love about what Kristen and the team did with FirstHome IQ is it's not a rep versus own calculator. It's like big picture. Let's look at the big picture. So it is just designed around I'm not trying to compare the two. I am trying to help you as a consumer get a big picture. Again, I think there's times that you use both. Like there's not one that's better than the other, and I think there's a lot of clients where you want to use both experiences. Um, but could you kind of share your best practices when you're talking to a one-to-many B2C, and you're using math and you're using numbers? Could you, just share how you do that and any best practices you have?
Yeah, so I have several first-time homebuyer or rent versus own TCAs that I have built out specifically for webinars. And I do a little bit of both. I focus on the month-to-month comparison between rent versus home ownership, right? And then I do the breakdown of tax benefit, net housing payment, and then we step back a little bit and we look at a higher view, and we show them, hey, if you decide that you want to continue renting after you sit through this webinar, which is perfectly okay, that's the right decision for you. But just know that if you continue on this path over the next 60 months, you're going to be paying your landlord $242,000, right? As opposed to home ownership over the next 5 years, you're going to be able to build this much equity using this much down payment. Here's your wealth position, and would you rather be here or would you rather be here? The right answer, is within you. You have the right answer. Everybody's scenario is a little bit different, but more often than not, when we show people both views from both angles, from a monthly payment comparison perspective versus a 5-year window perspective, the the math is pretty compelling.
And a couple of things I want to call out there that I see people going wrong. They don't build it out. So there was 3 data points: monthly, address the tax, and then future cast. And so I'll hear people that don't hit all three of those data points when they're helping someone vision cast. The other thing I see that I personally think is a mistake is they'll show like the value of home ownership over 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. They'll blow it up to a point that the consumer can't connect. And by the way, when the consumer can't connect, you're either losing trust or you're building trust. There's no neutral with trust. And so when you start with a shorter period of time, you're more likely to get the connection. You're much more likely to get the trust. Even though it's a smaller number, it's a big enough number. And I do think there's some times where you go even smaller. Maybe it's 2 years for a military family that's active duty. One of their biggest concerns are, am I going to move? Am I going to get transferred? And I want to know, am I going to get landlocked or what my risk is in 2 years? So to me, you want to vision cast a number, but small enough that you're getting connection, you're getting trust. And also with your audience, that's a great time to ask for engagement and let them know. Another great question to find out is, like in Mark's market, the difference between renting and owning is at least 150%. And it could be 200% like difference, and break that down. Find out from your audience, what are, maybe put up a survey so that no one's name is in it. Find out what people are paying for rent. Find out, by the way, what do people think are going to happen to values? Do you think they're going to go up? Do you think you're going to go down? And then you get audience feedback. And then well, this is what the data says, or this is what experts say. Don't be the expert, showcase experts, because you know what all experts have in common? They're wrong. They're right sometimes, they're wrong a lot of times. And if you're the guide and you're shining a light on the expert, you're never wrong. You're just the one like, here's the data. How do you interpret it? This is how I interpret it. Anything you would add to that, Mark?
Yeah, we use data a lot, man, especially for 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 the buyers that have concerns of 2008 happening again. Barry Habib and MBS Highway, they have some really good slides around that to show what happened in 2008 as it relates to birth rates and whatnot. So I use that pretty heavily to help people overcome the fear of a potential housing bubble, and to show them what demand is going to look like over the next decade to 2 decades, as opposed to what supply is looking like. So we overcome that objection at the very beginning of the home buying process.
Hey, Rodney just asked a question. What are your thoughts about these types of webinars, seminars, in person versus virtual? Any thoughts or opinions?
Yeah, if you're able to pull it off in person, the impact is so much greater. You have better engagement. You have people's like 100% of their attention, unless they're eating lunch or something. But if you can do an in-person event, I would highly recommend it. And I would also suggest um, you team up with a real estate team, right? Because they can bring in their prospective buyers. They can also help you market the event too, you know. And to Noah's point, marketing the event is so important. Like I can do all the planning for the next first time home buyer event, but if I don't talk to people about it and if I don't get the news out there, no one's going to show up. We focused for 3 consecutive weeks leading up to the event on consistent marketing. Now, we don't have a massive budget, so a lot of us just went to our social media, we posted stories, we were consistent with it. And here's the other thing that we did too. We took snippets of Mortgage Coach, you know, several snippets of Mortgage Coach, whether we're talking about the tax benefit on a monthly basis or we're talking about the wealth impact over 3 years or 5 years, and we will show that as a short story to drive or to grab attention of the audience and to help them or to get them to register for the event to learn more.
Yeah, Dan Keller in Seattle has been doing in-person events, partnering with realtors for more years than I know. I mean, it might be 10
Mhm.
years. I've interviewed him on that. There's some stuff on our YouTube channel on that, but I think it's maybe something Kristen and I can figure out how to bring that into to this community. Dan is a active member of the First Home IQ community, as hopefully Mark is going to become a more active member of this awesome community.
I think after Mamba gets established a little bit and there's less
Yeah,
craziness building a business, yeah.
yeah.
Can I
So
circle back, Kristen, to your
yeah.
question and add something? I think the really uncomfortable truth to go back to your question of like, how do I get people to attend is that nobody ever like wakes up and is thinking like, I want to attend a mortgage webinar. I want to attend a mortgage class. Like that is just not something that happens. They just say, I want a house. I don't think that's possible. And so the question of how do I get people to actually attend? Of course, there's like the logistical answers of like a reminder email or a countdown or like maybe do a giveaway, whatever. Like that part, I would argue maybe moves the needle the least. I think the part that moves the needle the most is how you frame it and how you market it. To Noah's point, I think the title of your class is really the entire marketing. And for a consumer, there's no brand pull to say, hey, Bree Lee's is doing a class or Mark is doing a class, but it's all in how you frame it. And so they might not know you yet, but you might be able to say something like their fear in their words, how to buy a house in Milwaukee when it feels like you already missed your window. Like that feels a lot more compelling to attend a webinar than um, first home buyer seminar. Like, who cares? First home buyer seminar. But if you say how to buy a house in Milwaukee when it feels like you already missed your window, that's like, oh my God, she's talking directly to me. So if you can name their fear and their words and their pain points, that will fill the room so much more than those reminder emails and the giveaway and whatever else you're doing. Q3 market update. Nobody cares, right? That's not filling your calendar, but frame it to their pain points of how they're feeling it. And that becomes your whole entire marketing strategy is the name of the class.
So I got to add a little add on to that. I mean, first of all, brilliant leadership, Bree. And you notice that the niche, one of the niches she uses was a local community. I just want to remind you, like, there's riches and niches. You know, Sean Herrero, it would be first responders. People that are in towns that, you know, have big military might be military, and when or if you should use your VA. So there are riches and niches. And hey, Mark, by any chance, would you, you know, we're going to be making a playbook. We already have a FirstHome IQ playbook, but it would be great to maybe see a couple copies of your marketing and a few things that we could add to our playbook. Is that something you'd be willing to share?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually working on building out. We have a new sorry, an upcoming first time homebuyer event with Cal Halfa in August. So I'm working on building out the marketing content for it. I'm using AI, using Claude. But yeah, I'll be happy to share that with you once we have the new
Yeah,
pieces
I'll
rolled
get
out.
a email going between you and Kristen, and uh, really, really appreciate that. Well, guys, we're getting into the last 5 minutes. Make sure if you have a question, you get it in chat. And I
I
know,
did.
Kristen, you've got thoughts.
Well, I just wanted to have, well, first of all, everything we have built is from community involvement. So, yes, if anyone has any input or you see something that's cool, send it our way. We'll add it to the playbook. And we do have Dan Keller's webinar we did, I think it was also about a year ago,
That's
some of
right.
that in the playbook as well. So, but Noah, I wanted to have you share just a little bit. On how, like technically, how you're setting up the webinars and any tips you have for people who are new to that, so we can add that in. And then we may not get to the post webinar, but I do think, I mean, AI is so helpful around all of this. We have a Claude skill that we use to set up the pre-event and post-event, content, copy, all of that, and then I go through and edit. But that saves you a ton of time if you can invest a little bit of time in building out a skill like that. So, Noah,
Hey,
any
hey,
tips for? Oh
real
yeah.
quick, Kristen, is there a way where we could give people like a Google Doc or something that they could just, hey, add this to Claude, and we literally give our community direction on how to set up a Claude skill to do
I can
this?
actually share the skill. Our skill is specific to to our events. So maybe not actually, but maybe I can create a skill that would be for those who are that would be
Keep an
more
eye out. That
general.
might be kind of cool, folks.
That
So,
would be cool. That's a great idea. Okay. Yeah.
Noah, what you got?
So as far as the technical side of the setup, what uh, this seemed to work really well. So Zoom, for example, when you're setting up a webinar, there are options in there to add images in certain places, right? So you can have a banner on the invitation page or on the invitation email that gets sent out when somebody fills out the form to sign up for the webinar. There's also a waiting room graphic, which Kristen has, and it's a perfect example of a waiting room graphic. It's great. So you want to do stuff like that, but we use, a lot of people use CRMs. They have there's a bunch of different kinds like Zoho or HubSpot. We use HubSpot. So what we'll do on the back end is instead of using the Zoom generic uh, form to sign up for a webinar, I'll make an entire landing page dedicated to that webinar with an embedded form that I created in HubSpot. Zoom is integrated with HubSpot. So then I tell it to, once somebody fills out that form, I'll set up a workflow automation that says, sign this person up for the Zoom webinar. It'll go through the integration and sign them up. So it creates this like pretty experience, right? Where they go to this landing page. There's a title of the webinar, a nice description, maybe a couple logos, depending on which panelists we have on the webinar. Tells them everything they need to know, and then a nice little easy peasy sign up form. And then I set it to remind people, I believe it's a week, a day, and an hour before the webinar. I'll send out reminder emails. So there's that too. And then if you're into email marketing, I love email marketing. That's kind of like where my marketing career really started taking off, was in working for email marketing companies. So that in itself works really well as well. So setting up like maybe like a workflow or a couple of marketing emails that you could send to opted in contacts from your database, inviting them to the webinar. And then we've also noticed that 30-minute webinars do really well too, because our specific target audience is pretty busy. So 30 minutes usually does the trick for us. But that's kind of my answer with the back end stuff.
That's super helpful. And I think something that I've always taken for granted of how important those short little touch points are. When we started doing that a week before, day before, and I think we do a 30-minute before or an hour before, like text reminder or something like that. It does help. It allows you to be like, oh yeah, I am going to hop on to that. And people are busy. So if as long as you're providing value with those touch points, then and Mark talked about having stories leading up to this. That can be a great way to have a touch point, a reminder, and still be providing value. So I know
Yeah.
we did not get to talking about post event, but there's a lot you can do there. Dave, why don't you close us
Yeah, I'll
out?
give a closing thought and then let you close it, Kristen. So I said there's riches and niches, and it's true. So I highly recommend you leverage that strategy in your copy and your headline. And Mark's example of 100 people coming because it was a ditch. It wasn't just a first time home buyer. It was California special program. So huge. And then there's the fortunes and the follow up. Like follow up is super important. It's not that complicated. And one statement is y'all know what to do. Like we'll put it in the playbook. We'll put some best practice follow ups, but follow up is so important. And I see so many people do events, whether they're in person, whether they're online, and the amount of impact and value is gonna like you could 10x it with great follow up. So just while we did not spend a lot of time on it, it deserves attention if you really want to get results from this whole initiative.
And Joe Soto goes through this. I'll leave this in the playbook when we send this follow-up as well. But he talks about making sure to contact every single attendee, thank them, ask for feedback, and that's a great way to start that kind of touch point. So you'll create your own follow-up system, but this is his, and I'll share that as well. So I just want to thank everyone for being on the call and contributing all of your thoughts, and Mark and Noah, Dave, Bree, all of you for contributing your expertise. We'll follow up with the webinar playbook and continue building this together. So thank you guys so much for being here. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.